away we go. So here we are. It is Mailbag night with Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Steiners. How's your day gone, Vince?
Oh, my day was, let's just say my day was one where the principal had to put out a letter to parents. That's how
Oh
my
boy,
that's how my
one of
day
those.
went, Sean Stiers.
That sounds
So
like fun.
yeah, that's how my day went. But it went fast. I'll say that. It went very fast today. So very busy, very
Interesting.
fast. Yes.
Interesting. Hang on just a second.
Oh, all right. Sounds good.
Had to grab my notepad.
Oh, very important. Very
Yes.
important.
Write down things. Well, get those questions in, everybody. I see people logging in and getting ready to go. We've only had a couple of questions so far. It is Mailbag night, and of course, this is the night where we answer your questions. And we've probably been answering more than usual these last couple days between this show and Brian and Ryan's show and everything. With the offensive coordinator
Good point.
and all that stuff. So, yeah, it's been eventful on my end, but still standing, rocking and rolling.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we're like right in between games for you. So
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Got a game tomorrow night, and so of course we won't have a show tomorrow night. We're still working out Friday because we've got the media thing
Oh,
at
that's right.
noon, which pushes back Brian's show, and
I
I've got
completely
something I've got to
forgot
do Friday night.
I completely
so-
forgot about Friday. Well, your thing
Yeah.
Friday sounds like a blast, if I'm being honest. Like that sounds really cool. So
Well, I don't actually get to go, but
Oh,
you know,
okay.
the wife and I are doing. I don't know if like maybe our viewers / listeners have heard of it. Like Tim Tebow does these things around the country. He sponsors these Tim Tebow proms for special needs people, and of course, my daughter is someone with special needs, and so there's going to be one in Warsaw, which is about an hour south of here.
Yeah.
And so my daughter's going to her first Tebow prom
Nice.
Friday night. And since Valentine's is next Tuesday, my wife and I are going to some, I don't know how fancy, but fairly nice restaurant.
There's
I think
some good
Friday
restaurants out there in Warsaw. So
like literally, I think the only one I've ever been to is like Golden Corral when Jesse used to play in baseball tournaments down there. We'd hit the Golden Corral or whatever the Ponderosa or whatever that place was down there. So
that's awesome.
That's about it.
That is great.
So, all right. Well, again, throw some questions in. We'll go ahead and get started with what we've got so far. And, some people are trying to snap our brains right away. Tyler wants to know, what do we think of the rumors of San Diego State and SMU joining the Pac-12? And I think it's beyond rumor stage. There is actually some like things going on with that where Klevkoff, the Pac-12 commissioner, it was either visiting SMU today or going to be visiting tomorrow. From a brand standpoint, I just, it's like SMU and San Diego State, that doesn't really do a whole lot for me. SMU, you would be at least in the Dallas market, but it's still not like SMU captures the Dallas. I mean, you got Fort Worth right next door with TCU, and Texas is still, and Baylor's just south of there, and Texas is still the biggest show in town. So I don't know that it necessarily moves the needle for me, but I guess if you're the Pac-12, you've probably got to do something because they're still trying to work out a TV contract, and they're trying to hold it all together, before it falls apart.
And if they're still trying to work out that TV contract, right? That means getting the Dallas, area is something that they would want to look into. It's like when the Big Ten went and got Rutgers. So they get the New York market, which was ridiculous, but they did it for the TV market, right?
At least you get in there. Yeah.
Because regionally, SMU makes no sense to the Pac-12.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, I think we can all agree on that. They're trying to get the Dallas-Fort Worth TV market, so I guess that makes sense. So it makes about as much sense as Rutgers to the Big Ten, and they're trying to stay viable. The Pac-12 is still trying to become or maintain their Power 5 status, which is not going to be a very easy thing to do if things keep trending the way that they're trending. and picking up SMU and San Diego State. I just don't know that keeps them super viable, but hey, that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Josh said he graduated from Warsaw and doesn't miss anything about it. Well,
well, fair enough. All right.
Yeah. I mean,
I'll tell you what, though, Josh, I don't know the last time you were at Warsaw High School, though. It has the athletics side of things at Warsaw is pretty amazing at this point. Like, they got a field house, and it is beautiful. They are the gold standard when it comes to the athletic facilities in this area.
Right. David says he's surprised, that Boise State has a better record than San Diego State and SMU, and surprised that they're not considering Boise State. Everything I've heard about Boise State in the Pac-12 in the past is football is one thing, but the rest of the sports just aren't, where they need to be, basically, from Boise State's standpoint to be able to do that.
Well, and again, if they're looking for viability from a TV contract standpoint, are they really going to get that by bringing in Boise State? You've got the San Diego market and you got the Dallas market that you're currently courting.
Right.
It's 1,000 times bigger than the Boise market.
Yeah.
Boise
State would be a bigger name, but there's just
absolutely
that
and
TV
better
market does nothing for anybody.
And better competition. I'll be the first one to admit that, no doubt about it, but they're not bringing these other two schools in for competition. They're bringing them in for what they can do for the TV market. So, yeah, absolutely.
Salty asks, which is more painful, a loss in the playoffs by Notre Dame or the Cowboys? I would have to say the Notre Dame loss is probably more painful because I'm pretty numb to the Cowboys losing at this point. It's like,
well, you should be numb to Notre Dame losing in the playoffs too.
Well, they've only done it twice though, and for that matter, the way those two games have gone, you're pretty numb by halftime to begin with. So it's not like, I don't know. I'd say Notre Dame though, for sure.
Yeah. I really don't have another, I follow the Bears, but their winning and losing has no effect on me whatsoever. So it is not even close to me. It's Notre Dame by far more than any other team that I would watch by far. And then you throw in the fact that we also cover the team and we are affected financially by their wins and losses. That is also
that's very true as well. That's very true as well. Yes. Florida Irishman wants to know better record this year, LSU, Alabama, or Notre Dame? And we saw this question come in and we both were like scrambling to find the schedules. So here's Alabama. You pull up the LSU schedule. I'll pull up Alabama.
Okay, I got it.
So here's Alabama. Middle Tennessee State.
Win.
Texas.
Win.
South Florida.
Win.
Ole Miss.
Toss up?
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I know I'm higher on Ole Miss than our buddy Brian, but
right. At Mississippi State, that's a win.
Yep.
At Texas A&M, I'd call it a win.
A dumpster fire.
Yeah. Arkansas.
Win.
Tennessee.
Toss up.
Yeah.
We'll call it a toss up.
Then LSU.
I want to say win.
LSU won a close one last year, but
they did. Yeah. I want to say win for Alabama. Should have won this year.
The Reese BK Bowl.
Yeah.
At Kentucky.
Win.
Chattanooga.
Win.
At Auburn.
Win. So
I'm going to say 11-2. I'm going to say 11-2. You had a few toss-ups in there. I'm just going to.
I did.
It's still Nick Saban, so I'm going to say 11-2.
So 11-2 includes the championship.
Just regular season.
They only have 12 games in the regular season, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. 10-2. 10-2.
Okay.
What was I thinking? Like SEC championship game.
Gotcha. Okay. I would say if you include the SEC championship, I'll say 11-2.
Okay.
I think they pick up one loss someplace in there, and then look, Georgia's the champ until they're not, right? So I'll take Georgia in the championship. So I'll say 11-2.
Okay. Now LSU.
We played this game with LSU last year. You remember this?
I know.
And I was very wrong. I was very wrong on this one. So let's play the game anyway.
Okay.
Since I did it, since I said wins and losses last time, I'll name the team. You tell me win or loss.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Opening at a neutral site, Camping World Stadium in Orlando, Florida State.
I'm going to say win.
Okay. Grambling State.
I mean, better be a win, right?
I would hope so. At Mississippi State.
Win.
Okay. Home against Arkansas.
This is an interesting one here. It's a rivalry. Arkansas was better this year, at least, for part of the year anyway, that we thought they were getting. They kind of fizzled late. Toss up. I'll say toss up.
All right. Ole Miss.
This is a tough one, too.
They're back to back.
I know. I'm going to say they're going to lose one of these two because they're back to back.
Okay, fair enough.
So we'll call one a win, one a loss, whichever one it happens to be.
All right. I'm good with that. Yeah, Missouri.
Okay. Win.
Okay. Auburn.
I think right now win.
I agree. Army.
Win.
Then they get their bye. And then, of course, they come off their bye for Alabama at Alabama.
What did we call this one when we were doing Alabama's? Did we go?
I said Alabama was going to win that game.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, that's the direction I'm leaning.
Okay. Then they host Florida.
Win.
Then they host Georgia State.
Win.
Okay. And then they host Texas A&M.
Man, they lost that one this year. It's going to be in Baton Rouge, though. That's like, talk about your butts on the hot seat. He could be on the hot seat in a hurry if he loses to Jimbo 2 years in a row.
That's a
I'll
good
say
point.
win. We got a lot of wins for LSU with this schedule.
We really do. And I don't know how I feel about that.
I know.
I feel like they're going to Brian Kelly at least one of these big games. Whether
that's what I'm wondering.
A&M, Florida, Alabama, maybe even Auburn. But, I tend to fall on the side of wins. So losses, right? So I said 11-2. I don't think LSU gets to the championship. So I'll just do regular season.
Okay.
I want to say 10-2 or 9-3. 10-2 probably, unfortunately.
Okay.
What do you think?
That's kind of along the lines of where I am as well.
Yeah. It hurts me to say it. It pains me to say it. But yeah.
And as far as Notre Dame, I think they're going to be right in that same. I think they're all going to be right around the same record. Basically, it's kind of a cop out, but I still think Notre Dame is right around 10-2. So
I think 10-2 is the floor for Notre Dame. I think anything less than that would be disappointing. And I said that going into this past year, and I maintain that. We'll
have a better feel after we know who the offensive coordinator is, though, right? That's one thing. Of the three teams, there's still a gaping hole on the Notre Dame side. But Josh is right; it's a very weak schedule that LSU has to play this year. Really outside of Alabama, they are all very winnable.
Yeah. Then they got a couple of cupcakes. I mean, absolute cupcakes in there. They got 2 Division I AA teams.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, man. That's SEC scheduling for you, though.
Yep.
It is what it is.
I agree. There's one that I just saw come in that I'm going to save that I found kind of interesting. I'm going to save that for rapid fire because I think it kind of goes with our lead rapid fire question.
Okay.
I don't want to give too much away too early.
Fair enough.
So Thomas asks, who's got more of a chip on his shoulder, Hartman for his OC leaving or Tommy Rees proving his worth with talent, even though the players at Notre Dame he recruited?
This is an interesting one. I don't know that Hartman has necessarily a chip on his shoulder. I mean, he came here for more than just Tommy Rees. So I don't know that he's got a huge chip on his shoulder. I think Tommy's a pretty competitive guy, and I think that he thinks that, going to Alabama is a step up where he can improve his brand and all of those things. And so I would say the bigger chip is with Tommy Rees, even though he's kind of directing how things are going right now. I mean, he's the one that made the decision to leave and all of that. I think Tommy's got the bigger chip on his shoulder. Hartman came here for more than just Tommy Rees. So I
Right.
don't know. Now, he may be upset that it's not exactly how he thought it was going to go, but
And there
he
was a
still came.
relationship with the Reeses
Of
and all that
course.
kind of stuff. But
Of
yeah,
course. But yeah, I still feel like the bigger chip has got to be for Tommy than it is for Hartman.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure that relationship helped get him here, but I don't feel well. We haven't got the chance to talk to him yet. We'll actually get a chance to talk to him a little bit Friday, and maybe kind of see how he feels about that. But I don't get the feeling like he's going to be ticked off necessarily
Yeah.
because Tommy Rees left. I think that there's if it's a chip, it's a bigger chip for Tom. Like he gets to face Brian Kelly this year, and
Yeah.
he's going to get to face Brian Kelly every year down there. As long
Facts.
as he's there, so
Yeah.
or as long as both of them are there anyway. So, I think that maybe there's a little bit of a chip there because they didn't necessarily leave on good terms.
Yeah.
When Brian Kelly left and wanted Tommy to go down there. So I think at least from that aspect, and maybe Tommy does feel like he was on Twitter, so we know that he was seeing things that were said about him
Oh,
during the
yeah.
season, and even though like the explosion on Drew Pine is like the biggest outward, sort of outburst we've ever seen from Tommy Rees. There was probably more of that behind the scenes than we ever really knew. So he's kind of got a little temperament in him. So I'm sure he feels like he's got something to prove down there. So I definitely lean more Tommy Rees on this one than Sam Hartman.
I would say the biggest chip probably resides on the shoulder of Drew Pine out of everybody. If we're talking about chips on shoulders, right? So I yes, I will say that I agree that Tommy is leaving on good terms. Jason says I don't feel like Tommy Rees is leaving on bad terms. I don't think he's leaving on bad terms from Notre Dame. I think he's leaving on bad terms for a lot of people that are Notre Dame
Yeah,
fans.
and like if that's what you thought that I said, no, I don't think he's necessarily leaving on bad terms at all.
Yeah, I don't think anybody blames him for leaving. At least I don't. Anybody that actually assesses the situation in the manner of we're just talking about football and programs and who you're going to be working for. Look, even Marcus Freeman, as confident as he is in what he's doing at Notre Dame, he can't look at himself in the mirror and be like, "I'm better than Nick Saban." Like, not yet. I mean, that's a long road to hoe before we start talking about Marcus Freeman and Nick Saban in the same sentence, right? Or in the same stratosphere. And so, just like I've always said, when I was a head coach and I had an assistant leave, or when I was an assistant on a staff and somebody would leave, they leave for a parallel job, then you get pissed. If they leave for a better job, then you pat them on the back and you wish them good luck. That's the situation as far as I'm concerned. He bettered his brand. He bettered himself by taking this job. There's no bad blood there, as far as I know.
Right. Kind of a follow-up. Do you think Marcus was thinking that Tommy was leaving this year because of last year? Tommy was rumored to go be the OC for Miami. Wasn't just rumored. I mean, he did interview
Sure.
down there. Like I think we said last Friday, if I were Marcus Freeman, I would have at least been prepared for the fact because again, about a year, not quite a year ago exactly, right after the Super Bowl. I think it was 2 days after the Super Bowl when Al Golden got to town and they introduced all the coordinators at that press conference. Marcus Freeman with Tommy Rees sitting 15 feet from him, in a chair, was that topic came up and he said something to the effect of, look, do you want to be here or not? That was a conversation that they had. And so I would like if I'm Marcus Freeman after that last year, I would be prepared for it. And I know Sean Davis had some things to say. I haven't listened to the Lucky Lefty podcast yet, but I saw on the board Sean Davis had some things to say about I don't know how much is speculation and how much he actually knows, but he, doesn't think that relationship was necessarily all roses. So
right, they weren't going out and getting beers after games. It doesn't sound like
right,
which may be true. I mean, Sean, I know you've worked with people that you don't get along with. I've worked with people that I don't get along with, but you can still have a working relationship and get things accomplished. and still be successful in whatever job that you're doing. You don't have to like everybody. You don't have to get along with everybody. I know I haven't gotten along with everybody that I've worked with, but that's reality. That's the conversation I have with a kid who sits in my office. It's like, I can't be in the same class as so-and-so. I don't get along with them. Well, better figure it out if you want to ever have a job, because there's no way you're going to get along with everybody that you ever have a job with, and you're going to have to be in the same room as that human. So,
that's exactly right.
That's called, learning how to be an adult.
Everybody's, you got to pull up the big boy and big girl pants sometimes. And sometimes you just got to, it's the same being on a team. Not everyone likes each other 100%. The only thing that you can ask for is that when you're at your job and, you're with the team, like that, coaches are respecting each other, and, like there's a chain of command within the coaching staff, that you're not, like, as an assistant, you're not openly questioning things that the head coach says in front of players and other staff members and stuff. It's like, it's one thing to challenge them privately, like if you're talking about specific things, but it's a completely different thing to do it, in front of the team, and, those kind of things. There's a respect that you've got to have.
Absolutely.
So, and again, I'm not saying that those things took, but it's just like, that's part of the deal.
Yes. No doubt. No doubt.
Chi-Town asks if there are plans to have more local media guests on the show during the off season. And I will tell you, Chi-Town, it's something that I've kicked around. What makes it a little bit more challenging is, like now, like when I was with the radio station, for example, it's kind of like I was Switzerland. So, I could have like anyone in the local media on and not worry about, affiliations and subscribers. And, it's like now,
it's a good point.
part of your base is sort of cut off because everyone's working for a different, website. We're all, kind of competing entities. If you have specific people, Chi-Town, who, you might suggest, I'll put a list down. And, the challenge is like who we can get because of the competing entities / who our listeners and viewers would be interested in.
Sure.
Because there are definitely some guys we can get, but it's just a matter of who you're going to be interested in, and who can, again, like where those lines are drawn, I guess. Does that make sense?
Oh, that makes perfect sense. And I know that there's people out there who work for entities that won't allow them to be on opposing shows, right? But we've had Tom Noy on, obviously, in the past, and obviously he works for the South Bend Tribune. We've had Tim Priester was on our Thanksgiving show over a year ago now, but he's a friend of the program, right? Tim's a great guy, and there's plenty of guys that we talk to, and we like those guys over at Irish Illustrated. That's who Priester's with, right? Irish Illustrated, yeah,
right.
And so those guys are great, Tim. And so, but yeah,
well,
I mean,
there are other guys that, like get along with a lot of them, but again, like because of like who their boss might be, and, dictating, well, you can't, do that and that kind of, it's just, it happens.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. It would be like, like the local TV guys. It's not like they're going to go on, like they could all come on a radio show or a podcast, but they can't go on each other's, TV stations, for example. They can't, it's like you're not going to see the CBS guy sit down with the ABC guy and, start chopping it up about Notre Dame football, So
exactly. And there's plenty of people that have their own podcasts where they're not going to want to boost our numbers, just like we probably wouldn't go on there necessarily boost their numbers. And it's all you scratch my back, I scratch yours kind of thing. So we'll see. I mean, if there's people out there, like you said, if there's people out there that really want us to talk to, give us a list, give us some names, and we'll see if it's a viable option.
Good call. So another Tyler says, he asked Brian on his show, he said, Manti, I'd like to know if you could bring in a former player as a GA or analyst, who would it be and why?
This is a very interesting one because, yes, Manti, I think, would be really, really good. Number one, as a GA, because he's never coached before, right? So you don't want to bring him in as a position coach or anything like that. It would have to be an entry-level situation. but man, he could recruit the crap out of kids. I mean, there's no way you could sit in a room with Manti and not be just all in by the time you got done with that conversation. I mean,
Right.
Yeah, he couldn't go out and recruit, but he could recruit when they're on campus, and that could be awesome. So yeah, that would be by far my number one. Oh gosh, maybe Zibby would be an interesting one to bring in as a
And I
GA.
guess he just started working at Western Michigan this past
Okay,
year,
interesting.
Zibikowski. Like he's
Okay,
decided, I guess, that he wants to get into coaching. He would be a really interesting one, actually.
okay,
Like if he would want to do
yeah,
something like that.
yeah. And again, it would be difficult to bring somebody in as a GA unless they're
Because it's a
already
GA. GA means
financially,
graduate assistant,
yeah.
So
If they're already financially stable, right? If it was a former NFL guy,
yeah.
Then you could have that conversation. But somebody like Brady Quinn isn't going to come in. His livelihood is tied to being a broadcaster. He can't give that up. That's his
Right.
paycheck. He's not going to give that up to come be a GA at Notre Dame, right? I'm trying to think of some other people that might be good.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's tough. Like
It is.
especially for the position of, like linebacker is what they need right now. And Manti makes absolute sense, and
Sure.
he is done playing. And as a guy who, hung around in the NFL for a few years, like at least 7, 8 years, something like that, like the financially viable part, you would hope that he's,
Yeah.
financially viable right now. But like, does he want to leave Hawaii?
Well,
Does he
he's got
want
a
to live in
newborn
South Bend?
baby. They got a
Yeah, like
couple of little kids.
is
Like,
coaching something that he wants to go into? Because if you're going
right.
to take a position like that, you're basically saying, I'm going to become a football
Yes.
coach.
Yeah,
And
I'm starting on the ground floor and,
yeah,
the whole thing. It's not like you're doing it as a hobby. That would be very difficult,
right.
obviously. So I don't see Manti being a viable solution, a viable possibility. I don't see him leaving Hawaii. I don't see him leaving his newborn child, to be a GA and go to class and, do that kind of stuff. And, uh,
Yeah, I don't think Tim Brown is going to come in as a graduate
no.
assistant. He's like in his 50s.
And
It's like neither is Joe Montana
yeah,
because
and
Joe is in his 60s.
and
It's
Jimmy
like
Clausen has
again,
way too big of an ego.
you have to know GA means graduate assistant. It
Right.
means that part of you being here is you're at least in some kind of graduate school and you're starting off as low as you can to try to work your way up the coaching ladder. So Watson, is that Courtney Watson? I think that would be a really interesting one. But again, like Courtney, gosh, it's been like 20 years since he was here. So it's not like he's a young pup either.
Right.
He's been around. Goolsby, and I think, from what I've heard, Goolsby is interested in getting into it. So, another really good linebacker. Again, Bryant Young probably eliminates himself. He's a Pro Football Hall of Famer. I don't think he's going to go be a GA somewhere. Because remember, these are not full-time positions that we're talking about. These are, either very low-level paying or student attached to it. But I mean, a lot of good suggestions. It's just that within the parameters of what's realistic, it's not going to happen.
The reality is, everybody, that they're going to hire 2 GAs who you've never heard of.
Right.
That's what's
Like
going to
having
happen.
James Laurinaitis was like, that was almost as high profile as you're going to find,
Right.
really.
And they're not going to hire a kicker to be the GA because that's just not going to happen. They need the GAs to do position coaching. I mean, that's what you need a GA for. They actually do coach on the field. Like, they are guys that you need to coach. They're not going to hire somebody to be a special teams GA. Like, that they don't have enough of those to make that happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And yeah, I mean, look, I would love to have all of those people. We have no idea who they're going to hire as GAs. That is so far off the radar. People are worried about the offensive coordinator, not the GAs.
Right.
That's just, I don't know who they're going to hire as the GA. And we'll all find out together, because they definitely won't make an announcement about it, because that's not what they do for GAs. Those guys will just show up and get to work.
Yeah, exactly. Sean, and I'll let you tackle this one, Mr. Offensive Coordinator. When you talk personnel like 12 or 13, Does it matter whether the quarterback is under center, like in the I formation?
Not when you're saying 12 or 13 personnel. That has nothing to do with where the quarterback is placed. It is just all it has to do with is who's on the field. So obviously, 12 personnel is 2 tight ends, 1 running back. 13 is 3 tight ends, 1 running back. The quarterback can be wherever. He can be split out wide in wildcat formation, and it would still be 13 personnel if you have 3 tight ends and 1 running back on the field.
Right.
So it really makes no difference where the quarterback is located.
And it doesn't matter where the particular people line up either.
Correct.
It's what position group you come from. Because
Right.
you remember what's his nugget, the Alabama quarterback, I think it was the Syracuse game when he kept calling Jaden Thomas a tight end, and he was referring to, like 13 or 14 personnel because Jaden Thomas was lined up in a tight end position attached to the line, but obviously he's a wide receiver. And it's
Right. Right.
And someone, after that, it was like a thing. I think I called him out for it on Twitter, and someone was like, well, he was lined up as a tight end, so it doesn't matter. You use this personnel grouping because of the position groups that they come from. It's literally, it just makes it easier,
right,
for the coaches to figure out.
Correct. So if you've got a tight end lined up in H-back, he's still a tight end.
Right.
If he's attached as a tight end, he's still a tight end. If he's split out, he's still a tight end.
That's why, like Chris Tyree, who would line up in the slot or as a wide receiver wherever, and with another, Estime or Diggs in the backfield, that is 2, as in 21. If you have 2 of them, it doesn't matter if he's in the backfield or where he's lined up, because in more cases than not, a linebacker is going to be responsible for Chris Tyree still.
Correct. So. Yep.
All right. Good chalk talk, Coach.
Thank you. Enjoy it. I should have got my whiteboard out.
Salty wants to know, is it certain that Tommy Rees will not be taking any Notre Dame coaches with him to Alabama?
He took a graduate assistant, and I don't know the kid's name, but I know there's a grad assistant that I believe he wants to take with him. I don't know. Brian would know his name. Again, it's a grad assistant, so it's kind of under the radar. But no, none of the regular coaches are going to be leaving to go with Tommy Rees.
Yeah, I mean, he was the holdover, and with the exception of one, Nick Saban has his own guys down there. I don't think Nick Saban was making this like, yeah, you can bring whoever your position coach in that guy. Like Marcus Freeman hired the rest of the guys. The closest ties are with Heastand, and I can't see Heastand upping, and like Harry Heastand was still living here in South Bend when he was working for the Bears, and then in the interim when he wasn't working at all for a couple years. So I can't see him packing up and moving to Tuscaloosa just because Tommy did.
No, I don't either. Not even a little bit.
Right. So Shannon wants to know over under 15 touchdown passes for Sam Hartman this fall. And I will just say this. If Sam Hartman doesn't have close to double that number, it's going to be a major disappointment to me.
Yes.
I'm not saying he has to have 30, but close to that number.
Well, I think, okay, can we reset this number at 30?
Sure.
Let's reset the number at 30.
That's probably the number, right?
Yes.
To me, it is.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Yes. I mean, you're the guy who sets the numbers. You're really good at that. But I think setting the number at 30 is where we can actually have a conversation.
Right.
If he's at 15 touchdowns, this team is in major trouble. And that means he's probably in traction someplace because he got hurt halfway through the season.
Even if there are a lot of rushing touchdowns, by the running backs, and even, maybe him, I don't know. But like, even if there are a lot of rushing touchdowns, I would still say, and I'm talking about like around 20-ish rushing touchdowns. I'm still saying 25 or so touchdown passes for Sam Hartman, because I think the passing game is going to look so much different than what we've become accustomed to seeing over the last few years. Again, we don't know what the offensive coordinator is going to look like.
That's a big one.
But Marcus Freeman is obviously looking for, he's got Sam Hartman here. Like he's not going to, Marcus Freeman wants to run the ball, but he's not going to look for someone who just wants to ground and pound all the time. He still wants Sam Hartman to be able to use that arm. That's why they brought him in.
Yeah, if we're setting the number at 30, I'm taking the over. I mean, assuming that Sam Hartman is going to be healthy all year,
I'm
I'm
still.
taking the
That's how
over.
I'm leaning.
Yeah, I'm
Ian
taking
Book
the
did it.
over.
If Ian Book can, I've again,
Yeah,
we're assuming a fully healthy Sam Hartman. I'm going to say yes, over
yeah.
30 for Sam Hartman as well.
I love John's answer. I'm going with the under because Buckner is going to be the quarterback.
Okay, that's
Hey,
fair.
that's fair. You never know with the new coordinator coming in. Maybe he
That's
wants the
right.
dual threat, and
New set of eyes, right?
it's. I'm not taking it off the table. And I would say if I was a betting man and I was putting percentages on it, I think the Tyler Buckner for quarterback probably maybe he went up a couple of percentage points after Tommy left. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
It just depends on who they bring in. It'll be. I mean, it's going
Yeah.
to be a competition.
Macio, I think that's how you say his name, is saying under, but Brent is saying 40. Terry is saying 40. That might be. And the answer, Josh, is yes. He did say passing. Yes, not
Yeah. I
passing
say
touch.
over. He's going to have over 30 passing touchdowns.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think so too.
What's the record? Do you know that off the top of your head?
Was it Clausen or was it Quinn? I can't. It seems like mid third, like 36-ish. Seems like the record off the top of my head. Are you looking for it?
I am looking for it. Let's see here. What is this? Statistical leaders. All right. Let's see here. Passing.
Those 2 years Quinn had.
There we go. Oh, single season. Brady Quinn 37.
Missed it by 1.
And Ian Book is 2 at 34.
There you go.
And then Brady Quinn is 3rd at 32.
There you go.
So those are the only 3 guys that have gone over 30 at Notre Dame.
Yeah. Quinn did it twice.
Quinn did it twice. That's right. So Quinn is also the overall touchdown leader. He's got 95. That's going to be a tough number to match someday.
Yeah.
Because he's
so the question's going to be: Is Hartman gonna break the single season record?
Absolutely. Hey, Drew Pine's in the top 10. FYI, it's got 22.
Hey, who would have known?
I know. And Jack Cohn tied for 8th.
EJ wants any speculation on NBC announcers yet? Who would you like? Well, I can tell you who I'd like. As far as speculation, I mean, nothing I've seen, and I listen to the media podcast that I talk about on the show from time to time. It doesn't sound like any changes coming.
I was just gonna say, like, why do we think it's gonna change?
Right.
I mean, I haven't heard that it's going to, and I wouldn't say that they've grown out of the position. That's for sure. So I don't know why they would change it. It's probably going to be the same 2 chuckleheads that are in there now.
Yeah. Because the problem is to go, to get somebody else, you're going to have to hire somebody else specifically to do Notre Dame football. So you're going to hire someone to do 6, and maybe some other stuff, like Tom Hammond used to do Olympics and stuff like that.
Right.
Like swimming or gymnastics or whatever it was that he did, and NBC just doesn't, like they just don't have a big stable of games. Like Fox, like ESPN obviously is doing multiple games. They need a lot of announcers. Fox even does more games. NBC is hiring Noah Eagle. We've talked about this before. Ian Eagle's son. He's going to be the lead play-by-play guy. Todd Blackledge is going to be the analyst to do those Big Ten primetime games, which start this fall. And I'm sorry. I'm glad that I'm going to be at the Notre Dame games because, like, the difference in the quality of those booths could not be much farther apart. Like, if you watch both of those games, if you watch a Notre Dame game with the booth that they're going to have, assuming it's the same, and I don't see any reason, that it won't be the same. And then you watch that booth, like Ian Eagle is like Jesse's age, and he's really good. Like the timbre of his voice, I think, is even better than his dad's. Like, their play-by-play sounds very similar. I think Ian's is a little bit, like higher pitch, whereas, like Noah, young guy. Yeah, I think I've talked before. He's done, like, over the last couple of years when Nickelodeon, when they've done some of those games on NFL games on Nickelodeon, he has done those games, and he did like some NFL Network Saturday games, after the college football season ended this
So,
year. And he
so
is
what you're
really
saying is he's put his time in and he's worked his way through. I mean,
yes,
the
yes,
little bit of name recognition, don't get me wrong, but he's put in a heck of a lot more play-by-play hours than the
yeah,
guys that are in the booth for Notre Dame games.
right, right. And he's the voice of the LA Clippers as well,
Okay, well,
so
there you go.
he's doing games on a regular basis. He's doing
Yeah.
a lot of games.
Yep.
So I don't think the NBC booth is going to change. And like I don't know who I'd bring in, but like the booth that's going to be doing those Big Ten games, that would be that would be like based on what the alternative is, it would be dream scenario. I think it could be because and I realize no one's ever going to be 100% on an announcer, and like there's going to be people, oh, Blackledge and whatever, and Pens, whatever you want to say about Blackledge. I happen to think he's a pretty good
Sure.
analyst who hasn't gotten caught up in in a lot of the BS that some of these other guys get caught up in. Now you start doing higher profile games and stuff like that, maybe that happens. But heck, NBC, go get Sean McDonough. I don't know what his contract is, with the ESPN, but that I think he would be a great one as well. Like like of possibilities out there, if he is a possibility. Because one thing, from what I understand, basketball is also part of these rights deals. Like, not only are you not going to see
Interesting.
Big Ten football on ESPN anymore, you're not going to see Big Ten basketball on ESPN anymore. So I don't know if NBC is going to start televising, more Big Ten, or any Big Ten basketball, because they're not in the basketball business really, or if, like if Fox is just going to absorb some of that because they obviously have, some games on Fox and FS1 and FS2 and that kind of thing. But that would be interesting if NBC is also going to add any basketball, because then if you did that, you would be giving some incentive to one of these other announcers,
Sure.
whoever it would be, to leave ESPN or Fox or whatever and go over to NBC, because you'd have more opportunities than just a handful of Notre Dame football games once, on Saturdays,
Yeah.
6 games a year.
Good point. Very good point.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Big Ten if, let's say, for example, Notre Dame, Ohio State is the Big Ten game of the week. I'd be ousting the boys out of the NBC booth and letting the Big Ten game of the week guys do that game. You know what I mean? Because it's on NBC, right? You can't have it on 2 different NBCs. So I'd be like, sorry, fellas, you get the week off. We're going with the A team. You know, I mean, that would be nice, but I just don't know how that would work.
Tyler Evans wants to know who's the most annoying announcers.
Ooh.
He says he wants to watch the game and mute it. I loved when before all the 7-second delays. I think I've talked before about how when I was in college, we'd mute the game on the TV and put on the radio guys, and stuff like that.
That's how I used to watch Cubs games. I used to
Yeah.
listen to the radio, and I still would if it wasn't for I can't even watch Cubs games anymore, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But
there are a lot of the ESPN guys who are annoying just because they're so low level. They're not near like the McDonough or even Fowler quality. They really kind of annoy me. I don't know all of their names specifically. The other one, though, there's a couple of, like, Spiro Ditas from CBS. I can't stand him, and so I'm glad that, one, the Cowboys are on Fox more often, and 2, he's a little bit lower in the food chain NFL for CBS. But he is one that, as soon as I hear him calling a game, I'm flipping to something else.
That's fair.
I don't know. Are there any for you?
I tend to tune it out when I'm watching games, to be honest with you.
I really do too. Like, I
I'm
don't
usually
get as
doing
caught up
other
in, but
things.
if it's a game that I'm into, the announcer, like, most of what is said on the TV sort of flies by me because I'm focused on the game itself.
Correct.
But if I'm a casual watcher of a game I really don't care about, then I actually hear more of what those guys are saying. And like I said, there's not too many Spiro games, that I'm like that intently into. And if it's just casual, it's like, nope, not today. I'm sorry.
I mean, there have been some people in the Notre Dame booth that have annoyed me. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll be real honest with that. Collinsworth is one of them, and Doug Flutie is one of them. Both of those guys annoyed me pretty good. I don't really have an issue with Jason Garrett. I just think that he got paired up improperly, and I think he brings decent insight into the game. He just doesn't get set up properly, so I can't really blame him for
I think he
that.
could be better if he was working with a more veteran announcer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
So those are the ones I can remember. I enjoyed listening to Tom Hammond. I really enjoyed listening to Tirico. I enjoyed what was Mayock? I thought he did a good job. I know he was 2 X's and O's for some people, but I dug that. I enjoyed that part of it.
There are a couple other announcers, like play-by-play guys. This is what I was thinking of when I was talking there before. There are a couple others who, to me, they put the analyst on the spot too much. It's one thing to set him up to let the analyst make a point, but a lot of times, and it's not just once or twice. It's like every other play. It's like, oh, should they be going for it here? What do you think? Or what should they do here on this play? And it's like now you're putting the analyst in the spot where he's got to predict, pass or run or what the play is going to be. It's just like let it come naturally and just let the analyst respond. You don't have to be putting him on the spot all the time. So there's a couple who do that. I can't think of their names off the top of my head, but it annoys me when I hear that.
Right. Don't put these guys on the spot like that. They can't predict the future. Like, come on.
Because basically then you're second guessing the coach every other play in the course of a broadcast.
And there's parts of the game where you can do that. You can ask the opinion. Like, hey, what would you do if you were in their position? Or, what, that kind of a thing. I have no problem with that because the color guy is supposed to be the X's and O's expert, right? And so I don't have a problem with, like, what would you do? Hey, it's 4th and 1. What would you do? That kind of, I have no problem with that because that sparks conversation.
Right.
But not, what are they going to do here?
Right.
know.
Shannon Burmeister is really good on the radio. Too bad he can't be on TV. I really agree, based on the alternative, because he actually did TV for NBC Sports Network before he got hired by Notre Dame Radio. I think that Burmeister would have been a huge step up for the TV TV booth. It's especially just in terms of experience and
see, that's
a lot different.
That's the perfect storm for me. Is you move Burmeister and Ryan Harris to the TV side. You and I take over the radio side.
Boom.
We coast off into the sunset.
That's right.
Let's go.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
Problem solved. There we go.
All right, Vince. Well, with that, we've got more questions. We'll see who's got the answers. Are you ready for rapid fire?
Bam! Let's go, baby. Got some good ones today.
All right. We're going to lead it off with an OC question. Fill in the blank.
Of course.
Kansas State University offensive coordinator Colin Klein is one of the latest names to pop up in Notre Dame's search to replace Tommy Rees, and that's blank.
It's interesting. It's not a name that I had on my list. I saw that Brian had that on the Champions Lounge earlier. It was last night, I think, is when he actually posted that. And
I think you're right.
It was one that I was not anticipating. I don't know a whole lot about Kansas State and what they've been doing. I know you have a lot closer of a thought process on those guys, but
because it's Kansas State, you're right.
Yeah, right. And reading what Brian had to say about them, I mean, I'm not going to pretend like these are my own thoughts, but based on when he was OC and how the offense improved, there's a 40+ yard jump in rushing, 50+ yard jump in passing per game, or yards per game, excuse me. He's coordinated an offense for a mobile quarterback, a less than mobile like there's a lot of good things there for sure. Yeah. I don't know that he jumps to the top of my list, but he's a guy that's intriguing for sure.
It's interesting. He's only been offensive coordinator for 1 year, this past year at Kansas State. And of course, he played quarterback at Kansas State. He's only 33, so he's a little bit young, or he's a little bit older than Tommy Rees, just a little bit younger than Marcus Freeman. He's kind of right in between them there, but he's coached quarterback since 2016. And again, he played quarterback in college as well. Now, full disclosure, I went to the University of Kansas in Lawrence. he is, a Kansas State guy where my sister played basketball. So, like they are the rival. But when I look at like some of the things they did, 32 points a game this year, 208 rushing yards per game they had this year, 5.1 for attempt as a team. They still threw for 210. And then, like you said, like they had Deuce Vaughn, which, like really good. Like at Notre Dame, you're going to have like 4 Deuce Vaughns, basically. Now, not identical skill set. I'm just saying you're going to have 4 really good backs of it. Deuce Vaughn had something like 1,500 yards, and they had Adrian Martinez, mobile quarterback. And you're going to have, it's like, look at what's coming up, mobile quarterbacks at Notre Dame. And he was a mobile quarterback. But then, like you said, he's shown that probably unlike Tommy Rees, like he can actually call a game and set up a game plan for a quarterback that wasn't just like he was in college. Like they had the less mobile guy beyond Adrian Martinez. And Martinez, by the way, ran for 600 yards and he didn't even play a full season, So here's one thing that stood out again to me, like looking at them statistically. They had 4 receivers with at least 42 catches and 5 with at least 375 yards this season. Guess who the only guy on Notre Dame's roster who could claim both stats was? Michael Mayer. Yeah. So it's like they used the whole field. It was a much more, not only did they run the ball really well, they passed the ball well. And I'll say this, like you can say, Kansas State, all that different kind of, well, Kansas State in Manhattan, Kansas, where I lived for 5 years when I was young, is not quite right in the middle of the state, but it's getting out there. And you're not close to anything in Manhattan, Kansas. You're 2 hours from Kansas City, to the east. You're 2 hours from Wichita, which is to the south. And there is not a lot around Manhattan, Kansas. And, that's part of why they've used so many JUCO guys over the years, because you can lure those guys out there with the opportunity, to move to Power 5 Division I football. So like from a recruiting aspect, I can guarantee you it would be a heck of a lot easier for a guy like Colin Klein to recruit at Notre Dame. And especially, again, like he fits the profile of the 99% of the rest of the coaching staff, young guy, up and coming success and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really intrigued by him. I really like it, especially because, again, I think recruiting is going to be heck of a lot easier for him. So I'm not worried about that. Like based on recruiting Notre Dame versus Kansas State, night and day different. It would be so much easier for him. And then his track record with the quarterback, I think that is, that's pretty high on my list of criteria, having that ability to work with the young quarterback. So he's one who really intrigues me quite a bit, actually.
Oh, I knew you'd have a lot to say about a Kansas State guy. I wasn't sure if it was going to be good or if it was going to be bad, but I knew you'd have a lot to say.
I'm especially when you sit back and look at what he did with that off. Now, again, it's like, you can criticize, he's from Kansas State, or, the Big 12, or, the lack of experience and all that kind of stuff. But as you always say, that Brian says, if you got the chops, you got the chops.
I always preface it.
And he seems like a guy who's got the chops to me.
Yeah, no, I always preface it with that. I would say everything you said is 100% valid, right? And it's 100% intriguing. If you put a gun to my head, I want somebody with a little bit more experience as opposed to just 1 year. But I could get on board based on everything that you just told me, right? I would want to dive in a little bit more, learn a little bit more about him. And I'm sure that that's what Marcus Freeman is doing right now. They're in the vetting process, right? But I am intrigued by it based on everything that you said. I feel like this one needs to be a guy with more experience, but it doesn't have to be that way. That doesn't mean you can't have success being a younger guy. It doesn't mean that at all. It's just, I want more security. I want the higher floor.
See,
you know what I mean?
Here's what I worry about with the more experience, like especially based on guys who are on this list right now. When you look at their track records and where they are in life and where they've been in their career, like if I look at a guy like Colin Klein, who's 33 and up and coming, versus these other guys, I just feel like they're probably going to bounce after a couple of years.
Sure.
Whereas
Good point.
Klein, and I realize some people that might not be as important because you go, well, if you get promoted, then that just means you've got a good program and you go find the next guy. But, like, who's the only team to beat TCU this year? Kansas. Well, before the national championship game, Kansas State, right? And they almost beat them the first time as well. So
I would say accurate, 100% accurate with that. I don't. There's so many names that have been floating around, and it would be a smooth transition based on what he likes to do to what the personnel that Notre Dame has. So I'm on board with that part. And
he does some RPO stuff as well, which I like.
Whoever comes in, if you're successful as the offensive coordinator, let's say 2 years, 3 years, you're probably going to leave. So whoever they bring in, if they're successful, I don't think they're going to stick around regardless of how old they are. So I can't look at this from a long-term situation. I want instant success, and instant success equals probably not going to be here long, if that makes sense.
No, I can see that. And I guess you could, but again, like look at the track record that Notre Dame has had in terms of, cranking guys out and sending them someplace else. It's a pretty short list.
Right.
So now that doesn't mean guys haven't gone other places, but they haven't had a lot of success. Most of, like you've had guys go to the MAC and stuff like, and they just, still working, but it's not like they've been ultra successful once they've got there. So, right. I mean, I can see your point though. Like, how important is that maybe you feel, like you're going to have somebody, who's going to stick around long. Fill in the blank. It's blank that former Notre Dame safety Brandon Joseph is not ranked among draft analyst Dane Brugler's top 15 draftable safeties.
Appropriate. I don't think he had his best year in 2020, and it's kind of been downhill ever since. I was very excited when he was coming to Notre Dame. I thought, okay, 21, maybe it was a little bit of an off year, whatever. We saw what he could do in 2020. Awesome. Let's go. He's going to be able to thrive at Notre Dame. Saw a lot of things in practice that I didn't see on the field. And especially towards the end of the season, it just felt like a lot of business decisions were being made. I was not impressed with his heart, to be honest with you. I just wasn't. And so I think that's appropriate. I think if you watched Notre Dame this year and you watched him playing, he's not in your top 15. And I have no problem with that. That's appropriate.
Well, I was shocked.
Light years ago.
I was shocked not top 15. Like for a guy who decided to give up a year of eligibility when his whole stated mission was to be a first-round draft pick when he transferred here from Northwestern, I was shocked that he wasn't at least like top 10 on Brugler's list. And like Brugler's not some hack. Like, it's like he's the kind of guy like you put stock into what he's saying. So I was shocked that he wasn't at least top 10 based on the fact that he decided to leave. But, that said, everything you just said, I completely agree with. I think that he's in this situation because business decisions, and this whole thing was a business decision, and it kind of seems like he's coming out on the wrong end of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So. Because you can have a 2020 where you're an All-American, right? Then you have a 2021 and you go like, okay, well, look what he did in 2020.
Yeah.
Then you have a 2022 the way he did. It's hard to say, hey, 2 years ago he was good.
Right.
That's too far away. That's too far back now. That's great. You got that on your mantle. It's too far removed from the reality that is right now.
Yeah.
And he did not play well. He didn't cover very well. He didn't tackle very well. It has nothing to do with him being injured. It has nothing to do with the defense fitting him. He didn't play well, period.
Yeah.
And frankly, they were better when he was off the field, especially second half of the season.
Yeah. There was a follow-up that I meant to have after the Colin Quinn question. Chi-Town wants to know, of all the Notre Dame offensive coordinator names we've heard, who would you choose? Who's your front runner?
Ooh. So I think,
and then, kind of along with that, David Jones was asking, does Klein measure up to Ludwig, Moorhead, or Joe Brady?
So I think for me, he is those three guys right there are my top tier. I would put Klein just underneath. Like just underneath. Like he is now at least in consideration. He's a guy that I could get on board with, but you better be putting a full court press on those other three guys. Like that's how I would go after it. And then if you strike out on all three of those guys, okay, now we move on to the next group, and he would be part of that group. So I think Brady, Ludwig, Moorhead are my top three. And to be honest with you, I don't necessarily have a front runner. I think all three of those guys are home run hires. And then Klein would be just underneath him, or underneath those two guys.
And I mean, really, like Brady obviously has the NFL experience, but, again, like when you're talking about actual college coordinator experience, Joe Brady is not that much more experienced than Klein, right?
Fair enough.
It's just that he has a skyrocket of a season, with Joe Burrow and that whole crew. But, he did, work as a coordinator in the NFL. And I completely agree with that. Like right now, I think that Moorhead would probably be at the top of my list.
Okay.
It's like I go back and forth between him and Brady. And I guess it's only because of the uncertainty about, whether Brady even wants to come back to college and that kind of thing. Like if I knew that that he wanted to come back, he would be number one.
Yes,
I think.
I agree with that.
And then, I think Ludwig is really good and then I agree. I would probably put Klein right behind those guys.
Like, and that's saying a lot. I mean, that's still putting him, right up there because those other three guys, those are absolute home run hires. All three of those guys are home run hires. So, it'll be, I'm very interested to see how this shakes out, who comes in for interviews, all of that. I'm very happy that all three of those guys are still on the list right now. None of those guys have been eliminated to my knowledge at this point.
Right.
That makes me very happy.
Like it ain't rocket science says Brady would be a splash, but it just isn't happening. And,
okay. But he's not off the list yet.
Not. Right.
I mean, did Joe Brady tell you that he's not happening?
Based on our intel, there's not a, negative response to this. Unlike the other two who, again, it's not like they turned Notre Dame down. It's like there was a conversation, but I don't think either one of those conversations got nearly as far as a lot of people were led to believe because they have a Twitter account. And it's like,
right, exactly.
I finally muted the jabronis last night who are, like spreading stuff with no real sources and everything else and keep beating the drum because they have no real reporting of their own. And so they're stuck with these two names in their head. I muted them and my timeline is just so much more serene ever since. It's like, it's just night and day.
Oh, absolutely. No doubt. And look, it ain't rocket science might be 100% accurate. Maybe it's a pipe dream, but until he says absolutely not, no, and he's off the list, he's still on my top three. I mean, that's how I operate. So you're saying there's a chance.
That's right.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I like Candle too. It's just
on that next
I don't like him as much. Yeah, I mean he's next tier. No, I did not mute Golick Jr. I'm talking about actual jabronis. Maybe you don't like Golick Jr. I'm talking about guys who don't even put their name on their Twitter account. That's those kind of guys who are claiming other people's information as their own. Basically, but I get the joke. So Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni had his young kids with him at his press conference after the NFC Championship game last week. Maggie Gray, radio host for CBS Sports, says she's tired of seeing kids at post-game press conferences because reporters are trying to do their job. Vince, do you buy or sell that?
Like, man, like that, it's okay. You can still ask your questions. Things are still going to be okay. Look, I get it to a degree, right? That is the place of business for these reporters. They're trying to do their job. Okay, I can see how you might be a little annoyed as the head coach comes up and he's got all of his kids with him. You're like, okay, here we go. I get it. But at the end of the day, you're trying to get sound bites. You're trying to get information. Did you receive that? Yeah? Then settle down. right? I think if anybody in that room was more annoyed by the fact that he brought his kids on stage, it was probably him because his daughter was mocking him, right?
That's right.
Which I thought was hilarious. Like,
And
oh,
she
well,
wasn't even like saying anything.
I
She was
know.
like
Like,
miming him, right? Yeah,
I thought that was hilarious, frankly.
right.
So it didn't hurt their sound bites at all. I mean,
Reporters
it's
still ask
okay.
their questions.
Yeah.
It's like, I have no idea if Maggie Gray has kids or not. You and I both have kids. You've still got pretty young kids. And you know me, like when my kids were young. And I realize people get bent out of shape. It's like, oh, it's your, and I realize there are a lot of, older school,
Sure.
media type people who are going to completely fall in line with what Maggie Gray is saying. I am not one of them because one, like Marcus Freeman had his kids running around at football practice. And there are times that, like I'd be trying to transcribe some quotes and I can hear Marcus Freeman's kids, running around in the background. It's like, it would be easier to transcribe the quotes.
Yeah.
But I get it. Coaching jobs consume, especially
Yes.
big time coaching jobs, consume so much of your life. And if you're going to sit there and you're Nick Sirianni, who I don't particularly care for, but if you're Nick Sirianni, you just accomplished the biggest thing you've accomplished to
Yeah.
that point. Obviously, if they win the Super Bowl, that's another thing. Why should I be mad if Nick Sirianni is bringing his kids with him, to help him celebrate, and be a
Right.
part of the biggest thing he's ever
Yeah.
accomplished in his life professionally? When these coaches wall themselves up in their rooms, in the stadiums and in the film rooms and everything else for most of the year, and they don't get to see their kids. Bring your kids, as Paul Maneri once told me, because he would bring his kids, from when they were,
Yeah.
keep them around as long as you can because it
Yeah.
doesn't last forever. So I've got no problem with it. Suck it up, old balls media guy. You're just going to have to deal with it, or Maggie Gray. I
There's other
apologize,
things you could
but
say, but yeah.
yes, just suck it up, man, because people have families and people have lives. I realize that there are a lot of people who want to separate, the professional from the family, but as someone, who sits on both sides of it, I've got absolutely no problem with it.
Well, I mean, it's not like he's taking him into a board meeting. It's a press conference. You're getting your questions
And
answered.
you're covering sports.
Right.
We're not covering politics.
It's
We're not
not
covering
that
the White
serious.
House. That's right.
It's not that serious. It's sports. It's okay. Take your job seriously. That's fine. But I have to say, if I was in Nick Sirianni's position, I'd have done the exact same thing. And I can guarantee you my kids probably wouldn't have acted as well as his kids
When I was
did.
coaching baseball and I was the head coach, one of my assistants, he was young. He was a single dad. He had a young kid. And he didn't bring his son all the time, but he would bring him from time to time. And, there was like a mom, you actually know the mom, like she got, started making snide comments about it. And it's like,
Really?
what does it bother you? You're sitting out here. He's in there.
Right.
I told him he could, it's like,
Yeah.
what, again, he's a single dad with a young son who he doesn't get to see all the
Right.
time.
Right.
As long as he's, got the helmet on and not running around on the field, no problem with it.
Yeah. My daughter used to come to games with me last year because I had a girl who played on my team and she idolized that girl. And so she wanted to come to the games. And so she would sit right on the other side of the fence from the dugout. And, yeah, I want my kids there to see dad doing something that he doesn't normally, people just obviously I'm going to take a guess. Maybe I'm wrong. She doesn't have kids.
That would be my guess.
That would be my guess because you don't understand.
Can't say for certain.
Because
That's
the
right.
time does go very fast.
It does.
And you want to spend as much time with them as you possibly can.
Right.
So that's why I love this job because my kids are literally right up there.
That's right.
Sometimes for the worse, but there's no travel. I can just go right up and have dinner with my kids and it's awesome. I mean, that's what it's about.
Yes. Take it easy.
Yeah, take it easy, Karen. I love that.
So LeBron James became the NBA's all-time leading scorer last night. And I'm not going to have that, who's the greatest conversation. If you look at the photo of the historic shot, almost everyone in the background is holding their phones up, recording the moment, whether they're taking a picture, a video, or whatever it happens to be, with the exception of Nike founder Phil Knight, who's just sitting there chilling on the, the floor seat.
It's great.
Watching the whole thing.
Yeah.
My question to you, Vince, would you have had your phone out for that?
No, I wouldn't have because I don't care. That's why I would not have had my phone out.
And
Now, if
not
I
just
got
for that, for like
no, I know. I
an
don't care.
historic moment. Like,
No, I
okay.
wouldn't have. No, I wouldn't have. I might have taken some videos of some other stuff. I am such a hater, and I can absorb this. I am such a hater of LeBron that I don't care what he does. I would not have taken a picture.
Well, again, not just LeBron, but like a similar historic moment, like whether it was
Okay.
LeBron or anyone, like remove LeBron from it.
Okay. That's a
let's
different
say,
conversation.
back in, like when Sammy Sosa was
Yeah.
hitting all the home runs in
Yeah.
Utah.
I would have had my phone out. Yep, I
Okay.
would have. Because like let's say Sammy's gonna break the home run record, right? And I'm in the stands and I had the ability to take a video with my cell phone back in 1998. I would have 100% taken a video of him hitting that historic home run. Absolutely. Now, would I have been watching it through my phone? No, it would have been a terrible video at the end of the day because I would have been like this, watching it with my own eyes, not through my phone. But yes, I would have had it out.
I think that there's probably a time that I would have, like if the technology was around back then. But what I've found, going to games, and it's like most of those pictures, it's like they're so crappy that like
That's fair.
Maybe it'd be cool to say, well, I got the video of
the video, yes. Picture, no.
or whatever.
I wouldn't be
but
snapping pictures.
The quality and like the actual, what it is, it's like I just don't think I would. And
yeah,
it's like the only good picture that you really get at a game is like if you're taking a selfie, and you get the game in the background or something.
Sure.
It's like otherwise none of those pictures ever come out.
No, they're terrible.
So I don't think I would now.
They're terrible pictures. I would definitely not take a picture. Right. I would have taken a video, but not a picture. So I guess I'm maybe in the middle of that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the pictures, like the picture of all the people taking pictures is 1,000 times better than any one of those pictures that those people got.
Yeah. Like the picture, it's funny because like think about Michael Jordan and that famous shot, the last shot that he hit against Utah.
Yeah.
Like I think it was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Yeah. And it's like, and you look and just like see, it's cool to see all the expressions on the people's face in the stands. Well, like all those people probably would have been like everybody last night and had their phones out if there were phones back then. Right. It's like,
absolutely.
But instead, like last night, if there were no phones, you could have actually seen people like living in the moment and enjoying the moment. And that's what I wasn't trying to make this a LeBron versus Jordan thing. Again, I understand it. People don't, you don't like LeBron, whatever. I don't care about what kind of role model he is or, any of those kind of things. It's
that's not the
NBA's all-time leading scorer now, whether you like him or not. And you don't have to compare him to Michael Jordan, It's so fill in the blank. It's blank that Tom Brady says he's going to take the next season off and begin his broadcasting career in 2024. Not this year. He's going to take a full year off and won't begin until 2024.
It's a heck of a power move. If I'm being honest, like you signed a 10-year deal that said you were going to do it as soon as you retired. And you're like, yeah, you know what? Gap year. That's a power move. And Fox is like, yeah, okay, no problem. I mean, that shows you the power that he has in an industry that he knows zero about. And he's getting paid a boatload of money for. That's a power move, man. I give him credit. I give him a lot of credit for that. Good job, man.
Yeah, I think a whole year off is like, it's interesting that he's going to take a whole year off. And he said, well, I want to, make sure that I'm, work at it. And, I want to be great when I do it and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Maybe that actually plays into it, kind of going back to what we were just talking about. Tom Brady's got young kids himself. And, I think that part of this is probably, if you're going to be, like that guy during the football season, unless you're Tony Romo and you just kind of, like phone in half the stuff, based on what most people seem to think about him, it's like, you got to put some work into that. There's a lot of work, with the research and putting your stuff together and preparing for the game and, watching game film, just like when you were playing and stuff like that. So I can understand, step back, spend some actual time with your kids for a little bit, not really have to, worry about doing too much. And, maybe in the meantime, you're doing some practice games and stuff like that.
Yeah.
yourself ready.
If that's what he's taking the time off for, then I actually commend him for doing that.
And this
Because
is something that crossed my mind, and not to cut you off.
no, you're
This
good.
is something that crossed my mind as well, that John said that he thinks that Brady is still coming back to the NFL. And like the
Leaving it
fact that,
open.
it's like, don't commit to Fox because I'm leaving my options open,
I will say, if he's actually taking the year off to actually prepare and learn how to be a broadcaster for a whole year, that's not very long, but that's more than a lot of these guys are doing. And so I actually give him a lot of credit for that he's taking it seriously.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then there's not many times I'm going to tip my cap to Tom Brady, but this would be one of them.
So just to clarify, Brent, when we were talking about when I used the Sammy Sosa example, he says, in other words, Sean, you support a cheater on the sauce compared to LeBron, who's an absolute great role model. The Sammy Sosa was for Vince, not necessarily for me. So Vince supports the cheater on the sauce.
Yes, I do. I support the cheater on the sauce. No doubt about it. And I do not support LeBron.
And I mean, in the moment, everyone was wrapped up in that, right? Like,
yeah, they were.
The home run chase and everything.
And if anybody says they weren't, they're lying to you.
Right.
They're lying. Revisionist history.
That's right. Going back to the announcer talk, Karen asks, why isn't there more consistency in announcer quality? Isn't there competition for those jobs? There are supposed to be, but as we've seen, look at NBC as an example of who there's still a lot of that at play. Now, the other side is there are a lot of announcers cutting their teeth, in smaller jobs who are really good. And it's definitely a business of, who goes a long way.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
There's a lot of businesses like that, but
in
that business, who does go a long way.
That is
especially for those big jobs.
In every business that I've ever been a part of, whatever industry, whether it's education, broadcasting, whatever, right? It is not about what you know, man. It is who you know all the way. And it happens like that 99 out of 100 times. Sometimes people get promoted for actually doing a good job. But I swear, man, it feels like it's who you know, not what you know, more often than not.
Yep. Terry, is a game better in the box or on the field? Is the box worth a splurge?
Okay.
Personally, I prefer it in the box.
Yeah.
Myself.
Yeah.
You can see everything. A lot of people love being on the field, but I don't really care for watching a game. It's like maybe, like we get to go down the last few minutes at a football game or whatever. It's kind of cool to be down there for the last few minutes. I wouldn't want to watch a whole football game from down there, though.
I wouldn't. The only reason I would want to be on the field is I'm coaching. That is the only reason I would want to be on the field. And when I was coaching, when I was a head coach, I was on the field for obvious reasons. But when I was a coordinator, I wanted to be up because I want to be able to see the whole thing. And it's so much easier to see splits and coverages and all of those things when you're up high. And frankly, I like being up high. When Brian and I went to a couple of games during the 2020 season and we sat in the stands because of all the restrictions and everything, we sat up high because I like that view better and he likes that view better.
Me too.
I don't like to have to go like this all the time. You know what I mean? I like to have my I got it all right here, all of my periph. I'm ready to go. So I like the box view, if I'm being honest. Now, there's definitely something to be said to being on the field with 80,000 people and the crowd and the excitement and all of that. But that's not watching the game. That's enjoying the atmosphere and the that kind of thing. If I'm watching the game, I want to be up high.
Yeah, I concur. Okay, last question tonight. Super Bowl 57 is Sunday. So my question to you, what major sporting event would you most like to cover?
See, this is a really, really good question. I had to sit down and think about this one. So I'm going to answer this two different ways.
Okay.
Number one, if I'm covering Notre Dame, it's the college football playoff and the whole thing. Like, that's what I would like. Going to the Final Four game, winning that, going to the national championship, like that would be one heck of a week and a half of covering a team. right? Like, I think that would be awesome. That would be awesome. If I don't have a team in the fight, right? If I'm just covering it, Super Bowl week is pretty up there. There's a lot going on surrounding Super Bowl week. I think that would be a lot of fun. I've always wanted to visit press row.
See, that's not to cut you off, but I think we're going to end up agreeing on this. Like, to me, like the actual covering of the game would not be as important, but I would like to be at the Super Bowl and like do Radio Row for a week.
Yes.
Now the caveat to that is you have to have a good producer, who can track down guests for you and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But I think that would be cool. Like, they've got Radio Row, there's everybody's there. They've got all these people floating around, different guests and stuff like that. You've got all these radio stations and podcasts. That's what I would like to experience, is like the Radio Row Super Bowl experience for a week.
That would be awesome. Someday you and I need to do that. Bucket list.
Yes.
Bucket list.
We need to hire us a producer. Well, Jesse will be our producer.
Love it.
And we'll just go to the Super Bowl.
Let's go.
See if we can get credentialed for Radio Row.
Why not? I'm down. I am down. And I will say, though, Irish Shinetown has a good one, the Olympics. I would not be upset covering the Olympics.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well.
You're in a foreign country. I don't travel very much. I think that in itself would be awesome. And every time there's the Olympics or the World Cup or whatever, like, I'm USA all the way. I dive in head first. I think the Olympics would be pretty stinking cool. So I will. That would be cool.
That would. There's a lot going on at the Olympics.
Yes, a lot going on. A lot of cultural, cool cultural stuff, and then obviously you get to watch sports that you don't normally watch. I think that would be really neat. And I think the Olympics would be cool. Plus, it's 2 weeks, right? Or even a little bit more sometimes. So
right around 2 weeks.
So if you're looking at something that you're going to get the most bang for your buck, right? The Olympics could be a really cool thing to cover.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to work on that. If Vince could get pink eye, just like Bob Costas a few years back. We need to work on that. You remember, like we were talking a few years back when we still thought we were going to get to go to Green Bay, to see Notre Dame play Wisconsin. We were talking about an RV and all that kind of stuff. I think we need to work on the RV, Radio Row, wherever the Super Bowl. We need to like research where the next few Super Bowls are. Find us a Super Bowl and hit that sometime here in the next few years.
I love it. Hey, and we can still do the RV to Lambeau. That's going to come up sooner than later.
Doable. Yeah.
So there we go.
So if someone owns an RV company, if you're a PR guy for an RV company, hit us up. We've got some good marketing ideas for you.
Just saying.
So Irish Breakdown. That's right. Yep. That's right. And I mean, if you're selling RVs, you're not just selling to this area, you're selling all over the country, right?
That's what
all these RV manufacturers here around this area.
Let's go.
That's right.
Let's go.
I told my wife actually last week, I said, we need to, like, while we're still making money before we retire, we need to buy the RV. And, so that by the time we're retired, it's paid off. And then she's like, well, then what do we do? It's like, then we go places.
Then we hit it.
RV.
You hit the road. Right. Let's go.
Open road, baby.
Come on. Let's go.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. Thanks for all the questions. We do appreciate it. Don't forget, no show tomorrow because I got a basketball game. We're still trying to figure out what's going on Friday. I know Brian's going to have a show that'll start a little later as possible because we've got the transfer guys. We're going to get to interview them at noon. So that's going to push kind of our schedule back and stuff like that a little bit. You're welcome, K-Mac. We will talk to you very soon. Hit the like button if you would. If you haven't already, we appreciate it. Subscribe, rate, and review, and all that good stuff. We'll talk to you later. IB Nation Sports Talk.